I have Trapper Searles here. He's a life energy coach, author, speaker whose journey embodies a no excuse mindset. I just had to interview him. He's a former successful entrepreneur who built a business and sold it for over seven figures. Trapper hit rock bottom when he hit a personal crisis. He survived a suicide attempt. He navigated his wife's traumatic brain injury and climbed out of emotional and physical wreckage. Today, we're going to be going over his life lessons, and I want to learn more about his perspective expert title personally, and I'm excited to share his story. Trapper, let's jump in. Thanks so much for jumping on the No Excuse Pro podcast.
Yeah, man, I'm excited that we finally made it happen. I'm excited to be here and just I'm here to listen and ask questions or to answer any questions that you have and have fun with it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your shift from leaving the business world to now helping people with coaching and energy. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I was in home services for about 25 years um, in the garage door space. I own a garage door company in Denver, Colorado called The Garage Doctor, and I started it just by myself at my house in Westminster, Colorado, and didn't really ever have a ton of intent on growing it into a business, so to speak. It was, I just didn't want to work for somebody, and I started a business. And Over 19 years, we became the highest rated garage door company in Colorado, one of the largest door dealers in Colorado. We had an amazing team, great reputation. It was all just built on if you take care of people, they'll take care of you. Really, just one thing that I focused on training into our team was serving our customers and servicing their products. And I think that's something that really created success for the business. And then also just having a really great team of wonderful people throughout the years was really special. I sold my company in December of 24 and then decided to move my family to Scottsdale just early 25. And so we put our house on the market in Denver. We moved before our house sold. So that was, I was just like, you know what? Most things in life I force because it makes me be accountable. I'm not afraid of that, some of those challenges. So yeah, so we moved down here. The house is on the market. It finally closed. That we were able to buy a home, and we absolutely love it down here. And the journey from entrepreneurship has been amazing. I still am a multi entrepreneurial, be a lifer, I think. So it's exciting stuff.
So how did you shift from like the performance focused or numbers driven focus in a business like you were running with the roofing business to a perspective focused change, and where did that show up, and give me a little more context on the change, and like what's the difference of a performance focused individual or a perspective focused individual?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So now what I do is I'm a life energy coach. I actually work mainly with executives within mid-sized businesses, um, 5 million to 20 million. And then I'm a partner in a company that works up to 800 million. And what I bring to the table is the perspective leads to performance. So, I mean, it's a different outlook. A lot of companies don't look at it and haven't looked at it like that because it's not a measurable statistic. However, when you're a leader on any level within your home or within a business or within a team, um, and you only have one perspective, which is the one that you've had forever. When a challenge comes up that your perspective can't see different angles of, it's encouraged to look at it from different spots, and so getting other people involved or learning how to look at it from different spots. And so that's what I help people do is step out of the room, step out of the box, and walk around the problem or the challenge. And then also just kind of lead with a positive energy, so to speak. When it comes to the energy that I'm trained in, um, some people think it's like a mystical thing. It's 7 levels of energy was discovered by Bruce D. Schneider. And it really just starts basic level 1 energies, victim mentality, and then it goes up to a pure energy. And then when you coach that into businesses, it's actually really special, because then people start making conscious decisions based off of information from their teams. And then it's not such an ego direction or derivative that's being made by one person and how they see it. So that's kind of like one of the perspective shifts.
Yeah, why do you think that is something important to make a change in businesses as a whole? Why do you think it's important to switch from performance to perspective?
Yeah, I think it's important because it opens up, I mean, unlimited opportunities for direction, leadership styles, and then also just every single human being sees the world differently. And so when, especially with leadership, a lot of times we will want our teams to see the things that we see, and that's just impossible.
Mm.
They just aren't going to see those things. We can teach them how to look out for certain things or certain ways that things are supposed to be done, but if we can honor the perspectives of our team, it actually helps us be better leaders also, because I mean, let's be honest, most leaders are wanting their teams to create the change within whatever business it is, and through delegation or whatnot. So if we can teach our teams what our expectations of them are, and that's a whole nother thing that I coach too, is I do expectation coaching. And so with perspective, when we as leaders can see things from different angles within business, it opens up opportunities
Mm.
across the entire platform.
Yeah, something I've been doing is the EOS model through traction. It talks about identify, discuss, solve. And I found that sometimes when I just want to jam things down our team's throat, we need to do this, and here, let's just do it. It's a much harder to implement something than identifying a possible idea. I don't like to call it issues, but it's an issue or idea that may come up. So what we do now is we actually just put it on a spreadsheet and say, this is the issue or idea we want to discuss. And then we just discuss it at a time in our meeting that's non-emotional, take emotion away from it. And then it allows us to see the perspective of our loan processor, of our manager, of whoever's working that issue. And I'm encouraging them to put things on the list themselves, not just me add it to the list, because now we're really working together. I want to get their perspective and ask, hey, how can we change things in a better way? I think you're onto something, because it's not just about pushing out performance, about making more money or helping more people, or did I get a sale today? Because a lot of people, based on their disc profiles, they're not driven by performance. We might be, as owners of the team or owners of the company, but most people are not programmed like us. So what you're saying is, and what I'm hearing is that we need to look at it from their perspective and try to all win together,
Mm.
rather than jamming down a agenda down their throat, because they're there to be a worker. They're not an owner for a reason.
Yeah, 100%. And so, yeah, something that I encourage people in their families, in their relationships, or, in business is, I'll say the terms challenges or issues just because they're so well known to most people. But, in my world and what I try to teach and coach is every single one of those things is an opportunity to create success on a higher level. So when you have a perspective shift to constantly being a learner, wanting to get educated, I don't think there's anything more powerful than that, as far as especially if you're a founder, a CEO or a COO. Ultimately, those level of individuals, they're overseeing the processes, right? And so when you get the perspectives from your team, whatever those members are, if you can truly delegate and empower them, they're the ones working with the processes every day, right? So I don't know your industry, inside and out, but when you're providing your services, the people that are working with you and your team, they know the nuances of what their role is more than you might. I mean, just because you're the founder doesn't mean that you know what they're doing every day or the questions that are asked, because eventually the owner is phased out of the process. I mean, that's the idea of a founder, anyways. You want to eventually not be a part of the process. And so, if we can empower our team with clarity of like what we want to see within our business, they understand it, they're bought in, but then they can bring their ideas to the table, and then you empower those ideas, or our leaders do. And then they create those ideas with the team that's actually working with the client. That's what creates a powerful system. And then their perspective is building the company that you founded, or the founder has founded. Or even, for instance, like a high level of, like Adidas, or, I've had the pleasure of working with an executive that I've talked to, and I didn't think I could provide any value on that level, because some of the coaching that they've had is $500,000 a year. And then I just show them a different perspective to a opportunity they were struggling with. And it was just one of those little things. And then what was crazy about that specific incident is they're like, man, I had a team member offer that idea up a couple months ago. And I was like, why didn't you explore that? And it was great because they were able to be vulnerable and just be like, my ego.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think it's important to have awareness. You mentioned awareness. I think it's one thing to talk about perspective, but if we have no awareness that somebody else has a different perspective, then you can never honor their perspective if you don't have the awareness of their perspective and that it even exists. So that's something that stood out to me on that. And one thing that I want to highlight here is you went from kind of a painful situation in your life. You went from a kind of a low level of your life to pushing through it. So what enabled you to refuse the easy exit, and turn it, really turn a corner and go to the next level and really help people and serve people? What enabled you to refuse that easy exit?
Yeah. I think a lot of entrepreneurs go through some really significant mental challenges, mental health challenges, because most founders apply a lot of pressure to themselves because of how many people they think are relying on them, and that they are. And then also just the lifestyles that you're trying to provide for your family and then your teams. And so in 2021, we had our highest revenue, highest profit year at my company. And I was like at my most miserable. And I actually didn't work a lot, to be honest with you. Like I got to a place in 21 where I was overseeing a lot of operations. So I mean, I wasn't in the field, I wasn't selling, I was just working on building a business. But by that point, I had let my family, I was on track at that point. But like by the time I got to being on track, other things within my house weren't on track. And so like when you're not aligned with your team or with your spouse or with your kids, and there's not clarity to what you're trying to accomplish, things are just out of whack. And so I was at a really bad spot mentally. And yeah, towards the end of the year, I attempted, and divine intervention is, all I can really give it to is my daughter called me when I was doing 140 miles an hour towards a cliff face in mountains, Colorado, and about 100 feet from the tiny little guardrail that wasn't going to do much. The phone call stopped me. And it was in that moment that, I learned that it was literally in that moment. I hadn't lived a single day of my life for me. And that sounds weird when I share that story with people, because it wasn't, I didn't say, man, I need to show up for my daughter, I need to show up for my wife. I really realized that I'd never showed up for myself in 38 years. And my daughter said, because I talked to her a few minutes before that at this area that had cell phone reception, and I had told her it was just a normal conversation because it was a pretty well planned out event. And she said, "You didn't sound like yourself, and I want you to come home." And that did it for me, right? I just went down to base camp, turned around. I told my buddies I got to get home. I had a situation I had to deal with. Went home, and then in that moment, I really started facing the challenges that I was running away from, which was my marriage is falling apart. Didn't feel like I was a good dad. I absolutely disdained my my company. I really didn't like anything about my life. And over the next few weeks of going through some intensive counseling, I really was able to, for the first time in my life, like take a break of like all of the chaos and identify that I really didn't even know who I was as a human being. And that was really cool. And so that was probably one of my biggest shifts in my life was identifying what do I want to do? Just because I'm good at this doesn't mean this is what I have to do. Um, and then also, I think that you said early in the question, like, how did I turn into like a person of service or wanting to serve other people on a different level? Um, Once I learned how I wanted to serve myself, um, this gets lost in translation sometimes when I share the story, but 6 months later, my wife had a traumatic brain injury and she ended up in the hospital. We were on a date night. She had no medical challenge. She's a very healthy person. And instantly, like when she's in a helicopter and they're like, hey, you need to just say your goodbyes because we don't know if she's going to live. And I helped put her on a helicopter and I gave her a kiss. She couldn't speak at that point and she was going in and out of consciousness. It was that moment, just 6 months after my situation, that that's one of the largest perspective shifts in my life was nothing that I've done materialistically and financially matters. Like, I mean, nothing that we have or have built means anything if Sam doesn't come home. I mean, and that was like, man, my whole life is in this helicopter. And then 76 days in the ICU, every single day being there. Um, that was really tough. Just, the highs and lows of ICU and then brain surgery after brain surgery, and then a stroke, and then all of these other challenges that Sam was fighting for her life to overcome. Every day, Jaden and I were working on our perspectives and our outlooks and the opportunities of gratitude. And I started reading books on ego and gratitude and just understanding how to appreciate life on a higher level. Um, so that's when I got into like the coaching and doing some of the ICF accreditations through the energy coaching, and that is really what started shifting my focus, my clarity onto providing like one. I believe like once we have tools, it's our responsibility to share our tools and our gifts. Like I believe that.
Well, and that's exactly why I wanted you on. I mean, I think it's important to catch yourself losing some identity because you put so much identity into work. I find myself slipping into that of, when you work and you want to push and you want to perform and you want to do well for the right reasons, even if it's completely for the right reasons, it's easy to kind of lose, what you're doing it for. I had a situation where 2 weeks ago, I was just feeling a little uneasy about, oh, I should be doing this or should be doing that. And then I just stopped. I said, you know what? What if I had, $100 million in the bank right now? What would be different about today? What would I do? And I really sat down and go, honestly, nothing would be different. I am spending time with my family. It's beautiful out today. We're watching sports with the kids. Day was amazing. And I say, you can't, my advice is you can't get so trapped in just the path that everybody tells you to go down,
Mm,
and you really need to identify what your path is
yep.
and why you're doing it. I actually think the why is a little less important than what the path is. So many people get so stuck on, I need to find my why. Is my why big enough? Well, sometimes it's
Mm.
not as big as I just want to do this because this is what I want to do. What do you think about like people that are hung up on trying to find a why that's so big? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I have both of those books behind me on my real bookshelf that's behind me. And because I was diagnosed adult ADHD, I've been ADHD my whole life. I I've never been patient enough to find my why, first of all. And I think that's a gift that I have. I also have friends that have spent years since those books were released of trying to find their why, and they get lost. It's paralysis by analysis. Most entrepreneurs just they dive in and figure it out. Like that's my MO. My wife loves and hates that about me. I might not know anything about something, but if I'm passionate about it, I'm going to do it. And and so I don't know if that helps with that part of that question, but
Yeah. Well,
I
it
think,
nails it. I mean, this is a good reason. Everybody's sitting here worrying about trying to figure out why and meditating. And, I'm actually about meditating and prayer. That's great.
yeah,
But if you don't take action, you have to take action to go.
mm,
And just because, like, I've heard of the phrase because goals. I'm going to do this because I want a beach house. All right. I'm going to
sure,
want a beach house because I want to enjoy family and I don't have to have a reason for it. This is what I want.
yeah,
And I think I would encourage people to stop worrying about, feeling bad about wanting to do things, and just take action and
yep,
go down the path and stop worrying about trying to find some deep why, because we all know what our why is deep down, that it's there. There's some things that control us overall, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be by the book what they're talking about. Just take action,
yeah,
go after it. If you want it, go after it. And then you can make changes along the way, but make sure it's for you. And you're serving other people. It's a coordinated dance of it, I believe, because you have to serve others while also being yourself. So, like, how does somebody, as they go through this process, you said you weren't really doing anything for you necessarily because you were helping everybody else. You did great for your family, you did great for your business. How does somebody catch themselves, um, and how do they last through maybe burnout or losing their soul in this process? When do they catch themselves, and what do they do about that process? And they got to have awareness first. So let's say maybe they have
mhm,
awareness, they're not feeling right. How do they catch themselves and how do they pull themselves out of that?
yeah, totally. So first and foremost, what I'll say is, when I didn't know who I was, it wasn't because I was serving anybody in particular. I just want to really be clear because it is part of a message that can be misconstrued. I wasn't like the most selfless person to everybody. I was serving what I call blind expectations. And I think that most people do that. And so I needed to learn what my expectations of myself are. And so I created an exercise, actually pretty recently, where I have clients write down the expectations of themselves. And they're like, well, which expectations? All of them. Whatever comes to mind. It's an exercise. Just write down anything that comes to mind. And then I have them write down the expectations they think that their wife and their kids have of them, and then their boss has of them. And they don't look at those. So they know theirs because they wrote them down, but they just get the other ones from their people and they don't look at them. Then they have their wife and kids write down their expectations of them. And I say this because you start in your home. Because for a long time, I built the financial success outside of my home and I focused all my energy on my business. When I sorted my process for me, I started focusing on my home. And so I call it my four walls. If everything in my four walls is right and good, and I'm serving the people in the four walls that I have control over my space, because I don't have control over a lot that's outside of the house, and not in a controlling way, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. Our outside of our walls at home are a reflection, a mirror of us. And so if we are living the right life here, the right life will become here. It just happens. And so um, blind expectations are what create our egos. So for me, when I lived in Casper, Wyoming, my ego was this big because there wasn't a lot of expectations for me from anybody. I mean, they just expected me to work it wherever, and I was going to become an alcoholic and I was going to stay in Wyoming. And I just, that's the expectation of like a small town. Once I moved, my blind expectations of myself got bigger because I saw nice cars and nice houses and bigger houses. And then I started working for people that had more and had more and had more. And then I saw investors that I would work for that had multiple properties and supercars. And every single time I would meet those people, my vision of success had to grow because if I wasn't as successful as them, they're going to think I'm a failure. And then it started leading me to thinking I'm a failure. And that wasn't off of anyone's expectations that were important to me. Those are blind expectations. And so I started living a life of like, how do I meet their expectations? What's crazy about that question is everyone I talk to about this feels this way. And then, but when do we ever ask what their expectations of us are? And then to take that the next step further, and I didn't come up with this concept, it's part of the 7 levels of energy. It's not fair for them. They don't have a right to create an expectation for me. Only I can create the expectation for me because I know what I can expect from myself. And then that translates into our relationships. My wife, do I have expectations of my spouse? Sure. And they have to be identified and communicated with her. If she doesn't know what my expectations of her, and I don't know what her expectations of me are, who creates the expectations? I do. Well, that's not healthy because now I'm like creating a blind expectation. And I lived my first 10 years of my marriage off of blind expectations. So when I finally had open conversations with her, she didn't expect anything out of me that I thought she did. And she didn't want a lot of the stuff that I provided. And so it is important. I think perspective and expectations go hand in hand. And so when I do bring that unique style to my coaching, it's something a lot of people don't think about. But in the workplace specifically, I think a lot of leaders think they set expectations because they create a title within an org chart. And then they assume this person that fills this role understands the expectations of the job title. But if the leader doesn't create a system of process for that role and express the expectations to that employee, there's a constant disappointment for the leader because they're like, why aren't you doing this? You should know to do this. That creates a lot of division in a lot of companies.
This is I love the idea of blind expectation. I never really thought of it that way because I might think I need to be doing all these things, and the people that I'm doing them for, whether it's my clients, my realtor partners, financial advisors, my family, might need something completely different. And having awareness around it is, I think the big takeaway for me is go to my family and my business partners and go, what do you expect from me? I'm doing all this stuff that I think that you want me to do, but is this what you actually need me to do?
Yeah, 100%. It's a great way to reflect. And then there are people and coaches much more educated than me and way more intelligent that believe the elimination of expectations is the best way to have a successful, and then you just stop business, relationship, friendship. Because with expectations create judgment because now people can fail us, right? And so the higher level, and this is something that I work on every day, and maybe I'll never reach this level of consciousness, maybe I will, but I'm a human being and I still have ego and I have pride and I'm competitiveness about me that I'm sure will be hard for me to work through, but at least I have a lot of life, I hope, left to work on it. The idea is that when we surround ourselves with the right character that believes in the clarity of the process, we don't need to have an expectation because they're already creating that for themselves. And I can't hold you to an expectation at all, like as a human being, because that's a judgment that I'm putting on not just you, but me, because now I'm creating this judgment to where like, if you fail an expectation that's not fair, it just creates a lot of challenges in relationships. And so I never got to this place within my business, but the businesses that I hope to build, I'll use an example in this case. Someone said, hey, if you were to build a home service company again, are you saying you wouldn't hire people that need to learn a specific role? And I said, well, I would hire for the role. Like I hired good people within my company and it cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, I want to hire good people, but I want to hire good people with intention to what they are masters of. Because if they can master a process that I need help with, I just have to let them know the clarity in which the company needs them, and then they do their job. And so I don't know if that makes sense, and I'm still working on trying how to describe that.
It hit home for me for sure because it's what I did was in 2021 or 20, I guess, the business got really busy in our mortgage world, and the challenge of just throwing bodies at it, which you probably did in your roofing business. Hey, I really like this person. This person's a really good worker, and you try to put him into the role. And my business coach would always tell me, develop the role and hire for the role. Don't hire a good person. One thing we have a saying is a nice guy itis. Don't just have a nice guy itis and be nice to somebody and then not want to fire them because they don't fit the role and they're just a nice person. So it's a challenge. So I have learned the hard way that I can't just take somebody that I like and put them into a role because they need a job and I want to hire
Mm,
them. I it's
yep.
not there's some management books out there that say the opposite of that, that talk about, if you find the right people, they could take you far. I think though, just because they're a good person, if they're not right for the role, that's why it has to start with the role, not just the person. Then you find that. So I'm glad you're bringing that up. As far as like, I think the challenge there is organically finding them. And this is why I like to do podcasts. This is why I like to do videos, because it attracts people to me, because people get to know me and what's important to me. Your story is very important to me because, I went through a similar time in my life about 10 years ago where I was running to the ground. I was beat up, working way too many hours, 12 to 15 hours a day, run ragged. And I went to uh, a business develop like a coaching event that was all around what if, and it was
Mm,
what if dot dot dot. So basically, whatever you want, right? What if it was different? Like, well, you don't have to be in this business. You could do something else. What would it look like? What if dot dot dot? And so I started thinking about what that looked like for me. And as you go down this road of really changing your perspective, my perspective first, and then seeing other people's perspective, is it led me down to a business where people honored me and I wasn't just ran over and I was going to do a really good job for people, but I wasn't just taken advantage of. And that was a perspective shift for me because I looked at it long term. I said, I could either be in the same position 10 years from now, or I can be in a different position. Fast forward 11 years.
mm,
That was August 2024. Fast forward, I made intentional changes in my life, and that actually changed how I do business. Now my business is 100% referral based. I have amazing partners, amazing clients who value me. If I don't call them back within 2 minutes, they're not running off to another lender. And if they do, they do. And that's okay. It's okay because that's their perspective. If they just need it now, that it's okay. You're not going to be able to help everybody. And it gave me time to be at my kids' sporting events. It gave me time to have flexibility to be present. I started taking my kids. I did life planning as part of this process, and one of the things was I wanted to be there. I wanted to make sure I had a night that I worked late. And one thing that my wife and I kind of butted heads with was like, well, I don't know when you're going to be home. Well, I'm like, I need one night a week where I can actually, I'm not coming home and that I'm going to be working. So what are we going to do? And so I picked Wednesday and I would work late. I did this for a long period of time, still do it a little bit now, but I did it almost for 10 years straight. And what I did was I took the kids to school in the morning. I had a little bit more freedom in the morning and then I'd stay late. But then they weren't waiting for me for dinner. And that was something that we had to talk about and
yep.
understand expectations because
That's
I
right.
wanted to come to her and say, what's important to you? And she's like, well, what's you want for dinner? And I'm like, well, I got to call clients in the evening. So what do we do about this? Right. I could have just got resentful and said,
Hmm.
you don't understand. I work super hard. You should just take care of the kids.
Mm,
And it's easy to fall into that trap and not look at from their perspective and be aware of how you're feeling. And I really, it's not a one and done. I think this is something that's important too. It's not just one and done. You got to continually work on yourself and be aware when you start slipping down this other path that you're losing yourself or feeling depressed or having some challenges. It's you got to correct course. It's just because you have had an awakening, let's say, or change your path once, it doesn't mean you don't start going down that path
mm.
again, right? I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, how do it's not just one and done, right? You have to continually work on your perspective on life, right?
Yeah. I love that. I love everything about that. And I think resentment is so easily avoided in marriage with just talking. I mean, um, you know, I wrote a whole program. It wasn't successful because I'm not a female, but the premise of the program was for for women to regain their identities that were lost or taken them from their husbands and their families unintentionally, um, without sacrificing time with their families. And the idea was I watched my dad unintentionally rob my mom of her identity. And if you look at women in our lives and moms, I mean, the women in our lives are the loves of our lives. We meet them, they're beautiful, we fall in love with them, they become our fiance, and that's like the first step of the downfall, if you don't have good communication in your marriage, of resentment. And resentment leads to a loss of identity, because what happens in traditional style families where we have, one person stays at home, one person works, or if both people work, men traditionally will take advantage of that dynamic. It's just something that we do. My wife was a career woman, so our daughter was in daycare at early age. So my wife would work really hard. I mean, as equally as hard as I did. She was a very intelligent woman and in a corporate role, and she wanted to progress her career. But man, was I still just like the man that was like, "Where's dinner?" kind of attitude. Like I did that, and I didn't do it intentionally. I just felt like my job and me creating our opportunity for the future that would alleviate from her from having to work, which was a blind expectation. She didn't ever want to not work. She loves working, but I wanted that for her, right? But I never talked to her about that, and so like the idea of communication is so important. And then when it brings me to the second part of that was a little bit of a tangent, but then bringing it back to what you were just talking about. Another thing with our ego and our pride, because of expectations, blind expectations, we get afraid to recreate because we think that people around us are going to judge us. So, for instance, I'm going through a lot of this right now, every single day. I have an executive coach that I work with because if I didn't, I'd go crazy. Um, I have a lot of business ideas, and I work on a lot of different things every single day. And when you don't have clarity on one thing because you want to make such an impact, and ADHD plays a role in this, we have what's called a lot of open loops. With open loops, you don't hit a finish line with a lot of them, right? But I feel successful just working on them, and so that's where the success is for me. But sometimes what will happen is the example I want to use is this. When I got out of the garage door industry in Denver, I said, I'm never going to do that again because of my previous and past experience of how I did it. Well, since I've been in Phoenix, multiple people are like, man, why don't you get back into garage doors? Why aren't you in the home service industry? Why aren't you doing this? This is what you're gifted at. This is what you're talented at. You build businesses. I hated it. That's one of the worst things that I could say because I'm a coach on anti-assumption. Like I shouldn't assume because I had an experience in my last business that is going to be the same experience I could or might have here. Now, I don't know if I'm going to start a garage door company. It's not like where I'm going with this, but part of the reason why I don't consider it is because of the judgment I think I would receive from my friends and family about saying I'll never do that again. Because in my mind, I'm creating a failure. And that's just not the case. So sometimes we revisit things that we're great at, and we think, man, maybe I should tap back into that resource. But then our ego will say, maybe that's a little bit of weakness. And it's not a weakness, it's just a vulnerability. And if it's a vulnerability that should be explored to create success for you and your team or your family, it should be explored. But a lot of times our ego will put a wall up. And the last thing I'll say regarding the question is a lot of the energies when you can recognize when you're in a victim mentality, when you're when you're being a victim of like, why is all of this happening to me? And when your team understands the different levels of energy and you guys are all on the same page with communication style, you don't even have to have the same expectations because now when you're speaking of, hey, we need to work together. Well, that's an energy level. Like there's a energy level of a system, progress within the system, within communication with your team, and you can move your business in one day from being stuck on a problem, which is an opportunity because of different egos and conflict. But if you're like, listen, we're looking at it this because we think this is happening to our business. This is happening to our industry, or, COVID is affecting us this way and it's creating these things. But if you understand how to tap into the tools within each level of the energies of a conscious decision making, all of those can lead to successful opportunities. It's just a matter of like your mindset in the moment. And instead of being reactionary, and you make a conscious effort to make a positive decision, it really changes literally every single day. I don't really think of, people don't believe this. I don't think about what I'm going to do tomorrow ever. I learned a long time ago, depression lives in the past, anxiety lives in the future, and at peace lives today. And so if I recognize that right now I'm having success because I'm having a great exchange of energy with you, I know that when I'm done with this, I'm like, man, what a successful moment I just had. And then I'm going to roll into my next moment. And then I'm going to have a complete reframe of like, what energy do I need to deliver in this context of this time? Then I'm going to win that. And then I might have one later today that I don't feel like I win, but it gives me an opportunity to reflect on what I can do to improve for the next opportunity.
No, I think that's important in being present and in making sure that we are because sometimes you're just always going to the next thing and then you're never actually enjoying anything, whether it's enjoying it or uh, having a valuable time with your family or business partners or um, introspective conversations like this, which is amazing. So my mind goes to, I'm like, okay, I got my planner book, I got this and I got this, and it's like, okay, what am I doing tomorrow? And then I got to schedule this and I got to schedule this, but I got to do this. And my mind starts going to all that, even though I have been a lot better about shutting things down and being present. How do you weave it together to be present in what you're doing, but also be responsible of the next steps? And does that make sense? How do you weave
Yeah.
that together?
Yeah. So in my current life, of what I live on the daily today is most of my things, everything is in a Calendly or a calendar that's
Mhm.
linked to my Google calendars. And so um, I'll I'll get through today the best that I can. And then tomorrow morning, my alarm clock will go off at 4:30. I'll get out of bed by 4:40. I'll do my morning process. I'll go work out. And key things that I do not do until I'm ready to mentally start my day, I do not look at my calendar and I do not look at my bank account. Like those are just two things that a lot of people let stress them out. And
Yeah.
so for me to enjoy the processes that get me in the right space in the morning, I do those things by 7 o'clock. And then I also don't allow any meetings before 8 o'clock. So that just gives me about an hour to have reflection before my day. And so there isn't anything in my current life that requires a ton of preparation, just because a lot of it is knowledge that I have in my head that I'm going to be sharing. Right. Um, so for me, I don't have to be living in the tomorrow a lot. A lot of businesses have to. Like you may have things that you need to prepare for, or your team. In that instance, I still think you do the preparation in the day. Like if it is a tomorrow task, that's fine. Like if there's something that's closing tomorrow, but that means the preparation should be in the schedule today, right? I mean, so there's different ways that you can
Well,
block your
I
time.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the key is to do your morning, whether you're taking action in the morning or whatever, but really not necessarily look at your calendar until about 8 o'clock. I think scanning it over the night before just to make sure if you have to drive somewhere for me or something, I need to be somewhere
Yeah,
by 8 o'clock. All right, I got logistically, I know where to go, but I'm not going to over worry about it too much. I think the key is you can have a calendar. This is what I'm hearing.
for
You can have a
sure.
calendar, you
Yeah.
can have stuff on your calendar. That's totally fine. But when you're going through the motions and you're doing your day, don't worry about this next thing you're doing. Don't worry about it. It's there.
Yeah.
You're gonna when you get there, you're gonna do it. It's not just by worrying about it and overlooking your calendar all the time and writing it
Mm,
down and updating it and changing things that's where we run into challenges. But when you're there, be present, enjoy the moment, and I really appreciate you jumping on this. This has been awesome. I I'm excited to learn more about the energy, practice. Tell us, there's two things I want to leave people with, and we'll put this in the comments too. You have a book. Tell us about the book really quick and where people can find it. And then also tell us about your coaching program and where people can find you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I wrote a book. The heaviest part of the book is the title. It's called "I Survived Suicide by Killing Myself." It's a story from pain to purpose. And the idea is there's kind of 2 points behind it. Is figuratively changing who you are as a human being. Every single day we have a choice to recreate who we are, how we want to live, etc. And so I could talk all day about that. You can find the book on Amazon. And if you don't, honestly, I mean this, I don't care how many people see it. I try to find a way to support what I'm about to say. Is if you choose not to buy it and you want one, just get a hold of me and I'll get you a book. The message is more important than selling the books. I average give 200 of them away a month. And so I'm happy to just share it. I think there's a story that can relate to pretty much anybody. Maybe not the whole story, but I think there's parts of it that can relate to most people. And then as far as my coaching goes, currently I do a lot of 4-hour trade. So, I mean, if anybody wants some life coaching, I'm not charging to do that. I'm building hours for it's called an MCC, a master certification through ICF. It's 2,500 hours and I have to document. It's a lot of time. And so I'm doing a lot of just pro bono to help people and to serve. You can check that out at trappersearles.com. My name is all my socials. So you can find me you can Google Trapper Searles. You'll be able to find a lot of different avenues to find me. But I'll leave you with this also. I think that it's important for us to recognize when we're in a season of service and serving, and I'm definitely in that season where I believe that when we are in a season of service and serving others, we create so much value for humanity. It's important to recognize those times. And so anyone who needs somebody just to listen, I'm here. And like, it doesn't cost anything. And I think a lot of people in the world today are all trying to find a way to make money. And I think that's super important. Right now in the season of my life, I just want to help people create a successful life for themselves.
That's awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate it. I definitely have a lot of takeaways on how to overcome excuses, achieve your goals, and help people in this world, and be more present along the way. So, Trapper, thank you so much for being on the No Excuse Pro podcast. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode of the No Excuse Pro podcast. Please like, share, or comment. We are available on any podcast. Wherever you listen to your podcast, jump in, listen, and share. Thanks again for watching and listening.